Picture this, okay? It's 1975.
Okay, setting the scene.
Right. 1975 on the campus of Eastern Michigan University in Ypsilanti.
I think I know exactly where this is going.
You probably do. It's the International Viola Congress. But instead of a standard, polite recital, the organizers decide to stage something just, well, almost unhinged.
That is a very good word for it.
You have this massive stage, right? And on it, there are two world-class soloists, Ernst and Francis Bundra, playing with a harpsichord.
Right, a standard Baroque setup so far.
Exactly. But behind them is a backing string section, the ripieno, and it is made up of over 100 violists, cellists, and double bassists.
Which is just a staggering amount of resonance.
It's massive. And they start playing Johann Sebastian Bach's Brandenburg Concerto No. 6.
Masterpiece.
But then, for the second reading, all 100 violists in that room decide to just, play the two solo viola parts simultaneously. Yeah. Imagine the sheer physical force of 100 violas digging into gut and steel strings, playing that B-flat major opening theme in unison. I mean, the acoustic weight of it.
It's a completely stunning image and a completely historically inaccurate performance, obviously.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's an absolute triumph of enthusiasm, right? That wall of resonance, all those overtones just stacking on top of each other in the mid-range. It's kind of the ultimate love letter to an instrument that, well, historically speaking, spent a very long time fighting just to be heard at all.
And that fight is exactly what we are focusing on today. So welcome to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We are pulling our material today from a truly exhaustive, amazing source. It's Maurice W. Riley's The History of the Viola, Volume 1.
An absolute Bible for string players.
It really is. And our mission today is to just completely unpack a fascinating, really transformative chapter from this book. We're zeroing in specifically on the 18th century Germanic and Austrian evolution of the viola.
Which is, it's a highly specific slice of time in geography. But it really is the crucible where the modern identity of the viola was forged.
Right, because if you are tuning in right now, and especially those of you in the viola studio community, whether you're a dedicated student adjusting your shoulder rest right now, or a teacher marking up a score, or even a professional performer, you know this stereotype.
Oh, we all know the stereotype.
Right. The age-old, incredibly resilient joke that the viola is just a filler instrument.
The dumping ground for failed violinists.
Exactly. The kids who just couldn't handle the E string, right?
Right.
But as we dig into Riley's research today, we are going to see how, through early treatises and the public opera scene in Hamburg, J.S. Bach's chamber music, and those highly disciplined courts of Mannheim and Berlin, the viola actually emerged as this powerhouse of dramatic color.
It's quite the journey.
Welcome to Viola Studio. We are a YouTube channel dedicated to the technical, pedagogical, and artistic development of viola students and instrumentalists. In every episode, our goal is to provide a concise and entertaining analysis. We will explore key themes, the messages of the great masters, and the historical context that shaped the sound of our instrument. Whether you are taking your first steps in the alto clef, or you are a professional seeking a new perspective, there is something for everyone at Viola Studio.
Don't miss our upcoming episodes, and remember,
there's always time to explore the history and the heart of classical music.
Where do we even start?
Well, to understand the revolution, we have to clearly define what the establishment looked like first.
Makes sense.
In early 18th century Germany, the official perception of the viola was pretty much set in stone by several major musical treatises. I mean, the real heavy hitters of music theory at the time.
We're talking about the academic baseline here.
Exactly. We are looking at Johann Mattheson's Das Neue Rufschnitt Orchester, which was published in 1713.
Right.
Then you have Johann Gottfried Walther's Lexicon from 1732, Johann Philipp Eisel's Musicus Autodidactos in 1738, and Joseph F.B.C. Major's publication in 1741.
And reading through these texts, it really feels like they all just agreed on one very limiting term for the viola, which was die Füllende.
Die Füllende, yes. The filling in.
The filling in. I have to say, calling it the filling in sounds like a polite insult.
It kind of is.
It's like complimenting a house by saying it has really great insulation. I mean, sure, it keeps you warm, but nobody's taking a picture of the insulation, you know?
That is a very accurate assessment of the prevailing attitude back then. Take Mattheson, for example. He was a prominent Hamburg cantor and composer.
Yeah.
And he explicitly lays this out. He acknowledges the physical reality of the instrument. He calls it the viola da braccio, or braccio.
Right, the arm viola.
Yeah. And he notes it is of a larger structure and proportion than the violin, but of the same family. He even documents the tuning, which is fascinating because it hasn't changed to this day.
Oh, really? He writes down the exact tuning.
He does. Lowercase c, G, D prime, a prime.
Same as today.
Exactly. But then he strictly defines his job. He writes that, and I'm quoting here, serves for all the middle parts and is one of the most necessary constituents of a harmonious concert.
Necessary, sure, but still just middle parts.
Right. And he goes on to say, for where the middle parts are missing, the harmony will be wanting, and where they are indifferently filled, all will be dissonant.
So he's essentially saying the viola's only job is to just not ruin the chord?
Basically, yeah.
It makes me think of load-bearing walls in architecture.
Oh, I like that.
Right. From the outside, everyone admires the decorative facade. That's your violin melody up top. But the load-bearing wall, the Füllinstrument viola section, is locked inside the structure. It's invisible, yet absolutely structurally vital.
That structural analogy works perfectly.
Yeah.
Especially because the structure of the orchestra itself was undergoing this massive architectural shift right at this time.
How so?
Well, Matheson's treatise highlights a very specific division. He explains that orchestral scores were dividing these sulenda parts into two groups. The viola prima, which took the high and real alto range,
Okay.
and the viola secunda, which operated down in the tenor range.
Wait, if he's calling it the viola prima, the first viola, does it imply there was a time when they had even more viola parts? I mean, why would an orchestra need a first and a second filler part?
That is a brilliant catch, actually. And it points to a major historical transition.
Oh.
If you look back at the French writing of the Lullian period, we're talking Jean-Baptiste Lully in the late 17th century, the standard French string orchestra was heavily bottom and middle weighted.
Okay, so totally different balance.
Very different. Lully frequently used three completely separate, independent viola parts to create this incredibly rich, dense, five-part harmony.
3 viola sections. Are you kidding? That sounds like a dream for modern players.
There's a very thick sonic texture. But Matheson's German viola prima is evidence of a contraction.
A contraction.
Yeah, the German composers began combining the two upper French parts. So they reduced the total number of viola lines in the orchestra from 3 down to 2.
Wow.
And eventually, across most of Europe, it would shrink down to just one single viola section.
But why would composers voluntarily give up those harmony lines? That sounds like a major musical downgrade.
Well, this raises an important question, right? Was the instrument itself fundamentally limited, or were violists just victims of changing economic and harmonic trends?
I'm guessing it's the trends.
The evidence points entirely to the trends. There are two massive cultural shifts happening across Europe.
Okay, what was the first one?
First, there was this socioeconomic pressure on court budgets.
Ah, money. Always money.
Exactly. It led to smaller, more agile string sections, which drove that gradual change from 5-part harmonization down to 4-part harmonization.
So it was literally just cheaper to hire fewer middle voice players.
Partly, yes. But musically, there was also the meteoric rise of the Italian Trio Sonata style.
Right, the Trio Sonata.
And the Trio Sonata structure fundamentally only requires 2 high melody instruments, like 2 violins and a basso continuo line at the bottom, played by a cello and harpsichord.
Ah, I see. So in a Trio Sonata, the harmony is entirely implied by the interaction between the bass line and the 2 sopranos up top.
Yes.
The middle is intentionally hollowed out. There's literally no chair for the violist to sit in.
Precisely. The musical architecture of the day simply didn't require an independent melodic middle voice anymore. The viola was squeezed out of the spotlight by the changing math of counterpoint.
That is so depressing for the viola.
It really was. Even J.G. Walther, in his 1732 lexicon, tersely described the viola as just a fiddle for the middle part.
A fiddle for the middle part? Ouch!
And he even suggested that those middle parts could easily just be played on small viol da gamba instead.
So they didn't even consider the viola's specific timbre essential. You could just swap it out with a gamba and call it a day.
Exactly.
But if the theorists had basically written the viola off as this replaceable filler, how does it ever break out of that trap? Like, what was the catalyst for change?
The catalyst didn't happen in the pages of academic textbooks, or even in the polite, restrained courts of the nobility.
Where did it happen?
It happened in the theater, specifically the public, mercantile, and fiercely competitive theater of Hamburg.
Which makes perfect sense. If you want to break the rules of classical architecture, you go to the theater.
Exactly.
Let's look at the Hamburg Opera at the turn of the 18th century. From what I understand of Riley's text, Hamburg was a bit of an anomaly, right?
It was.
It wasn't entirely dependent on a royal court dictating taste. It had a public opera house, the Oper am Gänsemarkt.
Yes, and because it was a public opera house, the composers had to actually sell tickets.
Right, they have to please the crowd.
They couldn't just rely on dry academic counterpoint. They needed drama, shock value, and emotional extremes to keep that mercantile class entertained.
And who was leading that charge?
The undisputed genius of this scene was Reinhard Kaiser, who became the chief composer there in 1695.
Kaiser.
Over his career, he pumped out over 100 operas.
100 operas, that requires an insane level of production.
Kaiser was a machine. But more importantly, he was a brilliant psychological orchestrator.
What do you mean by that?
He understood that the orchestra's primary job in an opera isn't just to play the right notes. It's to set the psychological mood and give emotional intensity to the libretto.
Right.
And when he looked at the viola section, which, remember, everyone else was using as a boring harmonic pad, he didn't see filler. He saw a highly specialized acoustic tool.
Because the viola physically sounds different. It's not just a big violin.
Exactly.
The proportions are slightly off, which gives it that dark, throaty, slightly veiled timbre. I kind of like to think of Kaiser as a film composer who suddenly discovers a brand new synthesizer module.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
He realizes, wait, this instrument is the absolute perfect sound for scoring a villain or a ghost or a scene of deep despair. He essentially turned the viola into the special effects department of the Baroque opera.
That is exactly how he utilized it. And we can track this evolution directly through his scores.
Let's hear some examples.
In Kaiser's earliest surviving operas from 1697 and 1698, Adonis and Janus, we see arias explicitly marked, aria con violet all'unisono.
Meaning he's completely stripping away the violins.
Yes. He rests the bright, sunny violins entirely. He has the entire viola section play the main melody in unison.
Wow.
It immediately plunges the listener into a darker, thicker, more melancholic sonic space.
For the viola studio players listening, let's talk about the specific physical reality of playing those scores, because Kaiser really pushed the technical envelope, didn't he?
He absolutely did.
In his 1704 opera, Nebuchadnezzar, there is a Sinfonia Affectuoso in the middle of Act 1. Kaiser scores 3 completely separate independent viola parts for this one piece.
Which is already unusual for the time.
But here is the wild detail. To avoid writing ledger lines, he used 3 different clefs interchangeably across those parts, soprano, alto, and tenor C clefs.
Which is just cruel. Put yourself in the shoes of a section player in that Hamburg pit.
Oh.
You aren't just sight-reading whole notes anymore.
Right, you're working hard.
You are navigating a dense, 3-part contrapuntal texture, and you are having to mentally transpose clefs on the fly depending on which part you were assigned that night.
It's mind-bending.
The soprano clef puts middle C on the bottom line of the staff. The alto puts it in the middle. The tenor puts it on the 4th line.
Right.
That demands a level of advanced musical literacy and mental agility that totally destroys the failed, untalented violinist stereotype.
It's an incredible cognitive load. And he didn't stop there. In Octavia, composed in 1705, Kaiser used the viola's specific tone color to score solo accompaniments for the character of Nero, highlighting his madness and tyranny.
A perfect use of that dark timbre.
And in Orpheus from 1709 and Arsinoe from 1710, there are 4 entire arias marked aria con tutte le violette. But I want to jump to what he did in 1712 in the opera Diana, because this is where the physical demands on the player just skyrocket.
Ah, yes, Diana. In that opera, Kaiser writes an obbligato viola part that extends the instrument's range upward to the E double prime pitch, the E above the treble staff.
Now, if you are a modern player, you might be thinking, E on the A string, that's 3rd position. I learned that in my 2nd year of lessons.
Right, doesn't sound that scary today.
But we have to explain the physical mechanics of the Baroque instrument here because it's crucial. The instrument Kaiser's musicians were holding in 1712 was very different from what we hold today.
Drastically different. The neck of a Baroque viola was shorter and thicker. It extended straight out from the body rather than being angled back.
Okay.
And crucially, the fingerboard itself was significantly shorter.
How short?
Well, a modern fingerboard extends far down over the belly of the instrument, allowing you to easily play high up the string. But a Baroque fingerboard often ended right around where the neck met the body. It may be extended only 20 to 22 centimeters in total playing length down the string.
20 to 22 centimeters, that's roughly 8 to 8.6 inches.
Exactly, just a tiny wedge of wood.
Plus, they didn't have chin rests or shoulder rests back then.
No, not at all.
So you are supporting this large, awkward instrument entirely with your collarbone and your left hand.
Yes.
And Kaiser is asking you to shift up, supporting the neck, while simultaneously sliding your hand to the absolute very edge of that short 22-centimeter wedge of wood, trying to nail an E double prime on a pure gut string, which is already prone to squeaking if the bow weight isn't perfect.
It was a precarious, highly exposed maneuver. Kaiser wasn't writing for amateurs. He was writing for virtuosos who understood the microscopic geography of their instruments.
That's amazing.
And he repeated this demand in 1724 in the opera Cupido, where another obbligato viola part features a compass stretching from the low resonant C string all the way up again to that treacherous E double prime.
This Hamburg pit sounds like an absolute incubator for talent.
He was.
And the most famous intern in musical history was actually sitting right there absorbing all of it, a young Georg Friedrich Handel.
Yes. In 1703, an 18-year-old Handel took a job playing the second violin and later the harpsichord in the Hamburg Opera Orchestra under Kaiser.
So he saw all this firsthand.
Night after night, he experienced firsthand how Kaiser manipulated the viola's dark timbre to heighten the psychological stakes on stage.
And Handel was nothing if not a brilliant thief of good ideas.
Oh, absolutely.
In his own 1705 opera, Elmira, he immediately applies Kaiser's trick, using the viola for solo accompaniment in 3 different arias.
He didn't waste any time.
No. The standout is the aria Sprich vor mir ein süßes Wort, which leans heavily into the dark, cavernous resonance of the bottom C string. He forces the viola down into its most unique register, a sound you simply cannot get out of a violin.
And that sonic memory stayed with Handel his entire life. Decades later, long after he had established himself in London, he still reached for the viola when he needed to conjure the supernatural.
Oh, right, in Alexander's Feast.
Exactly. In his 1736 work, Alexander's Feast, during the aria Revenge, Timotheus cries, Handel uses a divided viola section to paint a terrifying, shadowy background as the text speaks of Grecian ghosts that in battle were slain.
It's so evocative.
The violas aren't just accompanying the ghosts. Acoustically, they are the ghosts.
It's just brilliant. And Handel wasn't the only one taking notes in Hamburg. Christoph Graupner wrote 7 arias featuring a viola solo or duet obbligato across his operas, Dido and Antiochus und Stratonica.
Yes, Graupner was a major player there.
In fact, in Antiochus in 1708, there's a viola solo that requires terrifying virtuosity for the period. And even our friend Matheson, the very theorist who stubbornly defined the viola as Füllende Filler in his 1713 textbook, was secretly writing arias in his 1711 opera Henrico I, accompanied by a solo violin and 2 solo violas.
It perfectly illustrates the disconnect between conservative music theory and progressive musical practice.
Theorists say one thing, composers do another.
The composers on the ground knew exactly what the instrument was capable of. Sadly, when Kaiser left Hamburg in 1723 for a post in Copenhagen, the Hamburg Opera lost its guiding light and the scene declined rapidly.
A shame.
But the damage to the stereotype was done. The viola had proven its dramatic worth on stage.
So we've seen how the viola conquered the public theater, but if we want to talk about how the viola conquered the structural harmonic architecture of chamber music, we have to talk about Johann Sebastian Bach.
We do.
Because Bach's relationship with the viola was fundamentally different. He didn't just use it for a cool special effect in an opera. He lived and breathed the instrument.
Bach represents a total paradigm shift. He was arguably the first major composer to comprehend the potential of the viola holistically, not just tonally, but structurally.
Where did that come from?
This deeply ingrained understanding started in his childhood. His father, Johann Ambrosius Bach, was a versatile town musician who played violin, viola, and trumpet. And he taught Johann Sebastian the string instruments directly.
Right, we always picture Bach sitting at an organ, but his first major professional gig in 1703 at the court in Weimar serving Johann Ernst was actually a dual appointment as both a violinist and a violist.
His career as an employed string player was relatively short-lived, as his absolute mastery of the keyboard quickly earned him prestigious organist posts. But his physical identity as a string player never left his hands or his ears.
That's so interesting.
His contemporaries recognized this completely.
The historical accounts of this are amazing. There is a famous quote from his son, Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, who wrote a letter to Bach's first biographer, Johann Forkel. C.P.E. Bach explicitly states, as the greatest expert and judge of harmony, he liked best to play the viola, with appropriate loudness and softness.
And Forkel later published an expansion on this thought that I think gets right to the heart of Bach's musical psychology.
What did you say?
Forkel wrote that in chamber music, J.S. Bach specifically preferred to play the viola because with this instrument he was, as it were, in the center of the harmony, where he could hear and enjoy to the utmost what was going on both sides of him.
I want to just sit with that image for a second. Think about the physical, acoustic reality of sitting in the middle of a string ensemble.
It's a very specific feeling.
If you are playing the first violin, your F-holes are pointing outward, projecting the melody to the audience, and your left ear is just getting blasted by your own E string.
Very true.
But if you are playing the viola sitting in the inner circle, you are physically bathed in the frequencies of the entire chord. You have the high overtones of the violins hitting your right side, and the deep, rumbling, fundamental frequencies of the cellos hitting your left.
It is the ultimate omniscient vantage point for a composer obsessed with counterpoint. Bach didn't view the middle parts as a restriction. He viewed them as the control room.
The control room, I love that.
By playing the viola, he was personally managing the harmonic pivot points of the entire piece in real time.
It completely reframes Matheson's idea of Füllende. For Bach, being the filler wasn't a punishment. It was the seat of supreme harmonic power.
Absolutely.
And you can see how much he loved that mid-range texture in his sacred choral works. Out of his 300-plus cantatas, he constantly ignored the modern trend of four-part harmony. He actively reverted to the older 17th century style of five-part string harmony, specifically so he could justify adding a second independent viola part.
We see this lush, viola-heavy texture in the 1714 Advent cantata Nun kommt der Heidenheiland and the 1715 Easter cantata Der Himmel lacht.
Beautiful pieces.
But the most extreme, undeniable proof of his love for the instrument's color is the cantata Gleich wie der Regen und Schnee vom Himmel fällt, which translates to like as the rain and snow from heaven falleth.
This piece is wild. He completely fires the violin section.
Entirely gone.
There are 0 violins. The entire upper string section consists of 4 independent, intertwining viola parts. It creates this incredibly rich, dark, earthy, almost suffocating texture that perfectly matches the grave theology of the text. It's like sinking into sonic quicksand.
It's a masterpiece of orchestration. But for modern string players, Bach's ultimate testament to the instrument lies in his instrumental works, specifically the Brandenburg Concertos.
Yeah.
Composed around 1721, while Bach was working in Cothen for Prince Leopold, these 6 concertos essentially throw the standard Corelli Concerto Grosso rulebook out the window.
The standard being a solo group of 2 violins and a cello against a larger string orchestra.
Right.
Bach wanted nothing to do with that standard. And for viola enthusiasts, Concertos No. 3 and No. 6 are the absolute holy grails.
Let's look at Brandenburg Concerto No. 3 in G major. It is famously scored for 3 violins, 3 violas, 3 cellos, and a basso continuo. It is a completely democratic division of labor.
Everyone gets a say.
Exactly. The English music critic, J. Fuller Maitland, wrote an extensive analysis of this piece, and he strongly cautioned against playing it with a massive modern symphony string section.
Right, because if you put 12 violas on the part, it just becomes mud. Fuller Maitland argued that Bach wasn't trying to create a wall of symphonic volume. He was engineering a highly complex, interlocking puzzle.
It needs clarity.
He needed a clean, balanced, transparent sound where the listener could distinctly hear all 9 independent lines weaving in and out of each other.
But Brandenburg Concerto No. 6, in B-flat major, is where Bach's affinity for the lower strings achieves its most sublime expression. It has the most unusual instrumentation of the entire set.
How so?
Once again, Bach banishes the violins completely. The solo concertino group consists solely of 2 solo violas.
Just 2 violas out front.
Yep, and the backing ripieno ensemble is made up of 2 viola da gambas, a cello, and continua.
Now, for our modern players tuning in, we should note a practical reality here. Finding 2 professional viola da gamba players for a gig today can be tough.
Very true.
So, those gamba parts are very often played today by a second desk of violists reading tenor clef, or by cellists. But regardless of who is playing the backing track, the effect of those 2 solo violas intertwining at the top of the texture is pure magic. They are locked in this tight canonical chase.
The great Hungarian violinist Joseph Szigeti once wrote a beautiful reflection on this specific piece. He noted that Bach utilizes the upper register of the violas, the A string, with such telling vocal effect that you could easily close your eyes and imagine those contrapuntal passages being sung by two human voices.
That's a beautiful way to describe it.
It is an incredibly intimate conversational piece of music designed to be played by as few as 6 individuals in a small resonant room.
Which brings us right back to our opening image. Here's where it gets really interesting.
The Ypsilanti incident.
Exactly. Because this piece is so intimate, and because it is one of the only times in the Baroque era where the viola gets to be the undisputed star, the modern viola community treats it with an almost religious reverence. And sometimes they go a little crazy with it.
You were referring to the 1975 mass performance at the International Viola Congress.
Yes. You have a piece designed for 6 people playing quiet chamber music, and the Congress decides to stage it with over 100 players. Ernst and Francis Bunder on the solos, and 100 violists, cellists, and bassists roaring away on the ripieno parts.
Madness.
And then, reading it a second time, with all 100 violists playing the solo parts in unison, it is the absolute antithesis of historical performance practice. Bach would probably have had a heart attack.
From a purist's perspective, it's a nightmare. The sheer acoustic delay of 100 people trying to articulate 16th notes in B-flat major would be chaotic.
Oh, the lag alone.
But from a sociological perspective, it perfectly demonstrates the immense cultural weight this specific concerto holds for violists. It is their anthem.
And they need an anthem because the hard truth of Bach's legacy for the instrument is a little bittersweet. Despite his obvious, documented love for the viola, J.S. Bach didn't actually write a single unaccompanied solo work specifically for the viola.
Which is the great historical tragedy for the instrument. We have the brilliant 6 solo violin sonatas and partitas and the foundational 6 cello suites, but nothing natively written for the solo viola.
So what do violists do? They steal.
They absolutely do.
The history of the solo Baroque viola repertoire is entirely a history of transcriptions. Players since the 19th century have been vigorously borrowing from Bach's other masterpieces, and any viola student will tell you they vastly prefer stealing the cello suites over the violin sonatas.
There are very concrete physiological and mechanical reasons for that preference. Let's look at the violin sonatas.
Yeah.
Bach wrote dense 4-part fugues in those pieces, requiring massive multiple stops, 3- and 4-note chords. If you attempt to play those chords on a standard modern viola, which has a vibrating string length significantly longer than a violin's, the hand stretches become physically agonizing.
Yeah, that sounds painful.
You are contorting your left hand in ways that invite tendinitis.
Not to mention the transposition math. A violin's lowest string is G. A viola's lowest string is C. If you want to play a violin piece on the viola and keep the same relative string crossings and fingerings, you have to transpose the entire piece down a perfect fifth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the cello suites eliminate that problem entirely.
Oh, so?
The viola and the cello are tuned to the exact same strings, C, G, D, A. The cello is just pitched 1 octave lower.
Oh, right.
This means a violist can take a piece of cello sheet music, read it exactly as written, and just play it. It automatically sounds exactly 1 octave higher. The string crossings, the open string resonances, the physical geography of the chords, it all translates perfectly without any mathematical transpositions.
But just because it fits on the instrument doesn't mean it's easy to figure out how to play it. The history of these cello suites being adapted for the viola is basically a century-long academic bar fight.
It really is.
Bach composed them around 1720, but they were largely treated as obscure technical exercises until the cellist Pablo Casals famously resurrected them in the 20th century.
And when violists finally wanted in on the action, they faced a massive editorial crisis. You see, Bach's original manuscript for the cello suites is lost.
Lost to history.
We only have copies made by his wife, Anna Magdalena, and a few others. And in those copies, there are almost 0 dynamic markings. No fortes, no pianos. There are very few tempo indications, and the slurs and bowings are notoriously ambiguous.
It's the Wild West of sheet music. If you go to a music store today, you can buy 5 different editions of the Bach suites, edited by 5 different famous violists, and you will get 5 completely contradictory sets of fingerings and bowings.
This editorial chaos actually led to a massive public debate at the 1979 American String Teachers Association Bach Symposium held in Utah.
The ACE Symposium.
They assembled a panel of heavy hitters to try and find some consensus. For the viola, they had the legendary William Primrose and Milton Thomas. For the cello, David B. Fried and Paul Olewski.
I love reading about the symposium because William Primrose, who is arguably one of the greatest viola virtuosos of the 20th century, had a fascinatingly blunt perspective on the problem.
He did not mince words.
Despite his extensive scholarly research into the suites, he basically stood up and said, I do not consider Suite 6 in D major suitable for the viola at all. He disliked it so much on the instrument that he explicitly refused to include bowings or fingerings for it in his own published edition of the suites.
His objection was entirely structural. Suitesistus wasn't written for a standard four-string cello. Bach specifically composed it for a five-stringed instrument, often identified as the violoncello piccolo, which had an extra high E string.
Right, so on a five-string instrument, you can play all those soaring high-register passages just by crossing over to your top string in first or third position. It's relatively comfortable, but if you try to play that on a standard four-string viola...
It becomes a physical nightmare. To reach the notes Bach wrote for that high E string, a violist has to shift incredibly high up on their A string, venturing into territory normally reserved for the thumb position on a cello.
Right, which works for cellists.
But a violist can't use thumb position because the instrument is tucked under their chin. The physical ergonomics of navigating that far up the fingerboard past the body of the instrument while maintaining a good tone are notoriously awkward. Primrose felt it just didn't sound good no matter who was playing it.
Which is a bold stance for a virtuoso to take. And at that same symposium, the violist Emanuel Vardy threw another grenade into the room.
Oh, Vardy definitely stirred things up.
He argued against historical purism altogether. He said he preferred to play the suites as a 20th century violist, not an 18th century one. He argued that if Bach had access to a modern viola with a modern, heavier Tourt-style bow, he absolutely would have used them. Therefore, modern players shouldn't restrict themselves to trying to mimic Baroque setups or rules.
It sparked a massive debate, as it always does. The purists want gut strings, lighter bows, and original manuscripts. The pragmatists want modern projection and expressive freedom.
Where did they land?
Ultimately, the consensus of the symposium was that Bach's music is so structurally robust, so incredibly well written, that it survives and thrives regardless of the stylistic approach, provided it is executed with good musical taste.
But the cello suites aren't the only Bach works violists steal to build their repertoire, right? We have to talk about the three sonatas for viola da gamba and cembalo, BWV 127 to 1029, written between 1717 and 1723. We have the G major, the D major, and the G minor sonatas.
The transcription of these gamba sonatas for the modern viola presents a completely different, much thornier set of problems than the cello suites.
Really? Why?
With the cello suites, you just transpose up an octave. But the viola da gamba is a fundamentally different beast. A gamba has 6 or 7 strings and is tuned in fourths with a major third in the middle. It has a much wider total range than a 4-string viola.
So if you try to just copy the gamba part note for note onto a viola, you literally physically run out of low strings. The notes fall off the bottom of the instrument.
Precisely. And this led to some very problematic early editions. In 1952, the scholar Louise Rude wrote a scathing critique of the pre-war Ernst Naumann editions of these sonatas, which were published by Breitkopf and Handel.
What did Naumann do wrong?
Rude pointed out that Naumann, trying to solve the range problem, took extreme liberties. He altered notes, and when a phrase went too low for the viola, he just arbitrarily inserted massive pitch gaps. He would suddenly transpose a few measures up an octave just to fit them on the C string.
Which completely shatters the melodic line. It's like taking a beautiful sweeping staircase and randomly removing steps. But why is that such a specific crime in Bach's music?
Because these gamba sonatas are not just solos with accompaniment, they are essentially highly integrated trio sonatas.
Okay.
You have 3 independent voices. The gamba is voice 1, the keyboard player's right hand is voice 2, and the keyboard's left hand is the bass, voice 3. Bach engineered these 3 lines to weave around each other, crossing over and under in very specific mathematical ways.
Ah, I see. So if the editor forces the viola part to suddenly jump up an octave just to reach a note, it might accidentally cross above the keyboard's right-hand melody. You completely invert the chord.
Yes.
You ruin the contrapuntal voice, leading that Bach spent weeks designing.
Exactly. You destroy the architecture. And this is where the renowned 20th century violist Paul Doctor stepped in with a brilliant, highly pragmatic solution in his 1976 edition.
What was his fix?
Doctor looked at the history of how Bach himself operated. J.S. Bach was a relentless recycler. He constantly took his own compositions and transcribed them for different instruments, moving a violin concerto to a harpsichord concerto, for instance. And when Bach did this, he almost always changed the key signature.
Why? Just to make it easier to read?
No, to achieve optimum sonority for the new instrument. Different instruments have different open strings and different areas of maximum resonance. Bach wanted the piece to ring naturally on whatever instrument was playing it.
So Paul Doctor applied Bach's own Baroque logic to the viola problem.
He did. Doctor realized that to preserve the crucial voice leading to avoid those awkward octave jumps Naumann used, he simply had to move the entire piece into a key that fit comfortably within the viola's natural four-string range.
Okay, so what did he change them to?
He transcribed the G major sonata into B-flat major. The D major sonata became F major, and the G minor sonata was shifted down to C minor.
It's so elegantly simple. By changing the keys, he preserved Bach's exact architectural voice leading and simultaneously placed the viola in its most resonant singing register. He solved a technical problem by prioritizing practical musicality over rigid historical purism.
It is a perfect example of the work required to make this era of music accessible to the modern violist. Bach made the players work for it, requiring transcriptions and key changes just to get a solo repertoire.
But while Bach was making violists sweat over transcriptions, his contemporary, Georg Philipp Telemann, was doing the exact opposite. Telemann wasn't hiding the viola in the middle of a cantata or waiting for someone to transcribe his work a century later. Telemann was overtly, intentionally, and aggressively writing and publishing for the viola market.
He saw an opportunity.
He was directly, publicly contradicting all those theorists who said the viola was just a fallenda filler instrument.
Telemann's contribution to the viola's early solo repertoire genuinely cannot be overstated. He was one of the most prolific, commercially successful composers of the entire Baroque era. He understood publishing, he understood the amateur and professional markets, and he left a massive, ready-to-play legacy for the viola.
Even the theorists had to admit it. Johann Philipp Eisel, in his 1738 treatise, grudgingly noted that Telemann was famous for actually using the viola as a solo instrument in his concertos and overtures.
Telemann was actively composing for the instrument throughout his entire career. His very first dated viola composition, a trio sonata in G minor, appeared in 1718.
That's early.
This is a time when almost no one was putting the viola into a high-profile trio sonata format. And then, of course, we have his Concerto for Viola in G major, published in 1731.
That concerto is practically a rite of passage. If you play the viola, you have played the Telemann G major. It sits so perfectly under the hand. But Riley's text points out that Telemann's real commercial genius shines in a 1734 publication called the Scherzi Melodici.
Yes, this was the largest single opus composed for the viola up to that point in history. It is a massive collection of 7 trio sonatas scored for violin, viola, and continua.
And he themed them. He named them after the days of the week. For the theory nerds listening, the key relationships are fascinating. Lunetti, or Monday, is in A major, Martetti in B-flat major, Sabato in G minor, Domenico in D major, Ricordi in G major, Giuverdi in E-flat major, and Venerdì in E minor.
That's all 7.
Each sonata has a standard introductory movement followed by 6 short, character-driven movements in contrasting tempos.
It is an absolute treasure trove of repertoire. But what makes Telemann so vital to the instrument's history isn't just the sheer volume of notes. It is his intentional philosophy of interchangeability.
Interchangeability.
Telemann wanted his sheet music sold, and he wanted it played, regardless of what exact instruments a court or a tavern happened to have on hand that evening.
The ultimate giving musician's composer.
Precisely. He titled many of these works to explicitly allow for ensemble substitutions. A sonata might be published with the title Violino, Viola Gamba et Giambalo. Now, Telemann knew that gamba parts were written in the C alto clef, the exact same clef the viola uses.
Right.
He also knew his gamba parts rarely went below the viola's natural C-string range.
So he fully intended for a violist to walk into a music shop, look at a sonata technically written for a gamba, realize they could read the clef without transposing, buy the sheet music, and just substitute themselves into the gig. It was brilliant marketing.
He took it even further. He wrote a trio sonata called Concerto a 3, where the title page explicitly indicates that the horn part can be played by the viola, the flute by a violin, and the bassoon by a cello.
Imagine the pressure. The flexibility required of an 18th century gigging musician was insane. You show up to a wealthy patron's house for an evening concert. The horn player has fallen ill. The Kapellmeister looks at you, the violist, hands you the horn part, and says, "You're up."
Good luck.
You have to sight read it, adjust for the lack of brass resonance, and just make it work on the fly.
It demanded total musicianship.
Yeah.
And Telemann also explored dense, homogeneous textures by utilizing different physical sizes of the instrument.
Oh, this is fascinating.
He composed a remarkable sonata in F minor at 2 violini, alto viola, tenore viola, violoncello, e cembalo.
Wait, alto viola and tenor viola, are those just different parts or actually different instruments?
In Telemann's era, they were frequently different physical instruments. The alto viola was smaller, perhaps around 38 to 40 centimeters in body length, which is about 15 to 15.7 inches.
Okay, pretty small.
Designed to be agile in the upper registers. The tenor viola was significantly larger, sometimes over 43 centimeters or 17 inches, with a massive, booming lower register. And in the original manuscript for this F minor sonata, that second tenor viola part was actually written in the tenor clef to minimize ledger lines for the lower range.
Telemann basically gave the viola an entire catalog of legitimate repertoire, proving it belonged out front. But if Telemann proved the viola could be marketed commercially as a solo voice, why didn't every orchestra in Europe immediately adopt this? What was the missing ingredient?
The missing ingredient was a specialized acoustic ecosystem, a place where the players were virtuosic enough to execute the music and the orchestra was disciplined enough to get out of their way.
And where was that?
That ecosystem was perfected in the mid-18th century as we exit the Baroque and enter the classical era in the city of Mannheim.
The Mannheim machine. This is one of my favorite periods in music history. Under the patronage of Elector Karl Theodor, the Mannheim Court Orchestra became the most famous, highly disciplined ensemble in all of Europe.
They were legendary. Heavy hitters of the era like the English historian Charles Burney and a young Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart traveled there and were absolutely blown away.
Because of their precision, right?
Yes. The orchestra was renowned for its unified bowing and its ability to execute massive, terrifying dynamic nuances. The famous Mannheim Crescendo, where the entire orchestra would seamlessly swell from a whisper to a roar.
And right in the middle of this powerhouse, high-octane orchestra was a family that basically operated as a viola dynasty, the Stamitz family.
It all started with Johann Stamitz, who joined the Mannheim Orchestra in 1745 as a violinist, and quickly rose to become its conductor and director of instrumental music. Johann was a virtuoso on the violin, the viola, and the sympathetic stringed viola d'amore.
He was a superstar.
He was an international star. In 1754, he made his debut in Paris at the highly prestigious concert Spirituals, playing both a violin concerto and a viola d'amore sonata.
I do want to throw in a quick historical correction for our listeners because Riley's text points this out. Johann is often credited in older catalogs with a very famous viola concerto in G major.
Oh, yes.
But modern research by Walter Lieberman has definitively proven that this piece was actually adapted from an earlier concerto Johann had written for the flute. So it's not a pure native viola piece.
That is true and a good clarification. However, it was Johann's sons, Karl and Anton Stamitz, who truly cemented the family's legacy for the instrument. They didn't just adapt flute pieces. They grew up entirely within the Mannheim environment, surrounded by this explosive new classical style, and wrote specifically for the viola.
Karl Stamitz, the older brother born in 1746, was a rock star. His fame as a performer was so immense that the contemporary German lexicographer Gerber basically used him as the gold standard.
Gerber's praise was huge.
Gerber stated that if you wanted to succeed as a free touring artist in Germany, you couldn't possess any less artistry than Karl Stamitz.
Karl took that reputation on the road. He left the financial security of the Mannheim Orchestra in 1770 to tour Europe. In 1772, he debuted in Paris, playing a duo for violin and viola with his younger brother Anton.
Must have been quite the show.
Karl was an absolute machine of composition. He wrote over 80 symphonies. 26 of those were symphony concertants, many featuring the viola as a solo voice interacting with other instruments. But his greatest legacy for us lies in his 3 specific foundational concertos for the solo viola.
Okay, let's look closely at those concertos because they reveal a massive leap in the instrument's technical evolution, and they involve some serious acoustic trickery. We have Concerto No. 1 in D major and Concerto No. 3 in A major. But Concerto No. 2 provides a fascinating look into 18th century performance practice.
Yes. Today, most students know Concerto No. 2 as the concerto in A major, largely thanks to a widely used modern edition by Jerzy Kosmala and Janis Zathe.
Right.
But originally, Karl Stamitz wrote the orchestral backing parts in the key of B-flat major.
Wait, if the orchestra is playing in B-flat major, why is the modern solo part published in A major? How does that work? This is where we have to talk about the magic of scordatura.
Scordatura translates roughly to mistuning. Karl Stamitz required the viola soloist to intentionally tune all 4 of their strings up a half step. So instead of the standard C, G, D, A, the viola strings were cranked up to C sharp, G sharp, D sharp, A sharp.
This is a total brain bender for the player. The violist puts the sheet music on the stand, The music is written in A major, which is a very bright, comfortable key for string players because you get to use lots of ringing open strings.
Yes.
You place your fingers on the fingerboard exactly as if you were playing an A major scale. But because the physical instrument has been tuned higher, the acoustic sound that actually comes out of the F-holes is a B-flat major scale, which perfectly matches the orchestra.
Exactly. The player reads in A, but sounds in B-flat.
Yeah.
But what's fascinating here is why Carl Stamitz did this. He didn't just want to make the fingering easier. He was chasing a specific physical and acoustic result.
Let's talk about the physics of that. By tuning all 4 strings up a half step, you are dramatically increasing the tension on the instrument. You are adding pounds of extra downward pressure from the bridge onto the top plate of the viola.
Precisely. And that increased tension fundamentally changes how the wood vibrates. It tightens the response. It gives the viola a much more brilliant, penetrating, and significantly louder tone. The sound becomes slightly more strident, cutting through the air faster.
It's an acoustic hack. Carl Stamitz knew that a solo viola naturally struggles to project over a large, loud, classical orchestra, especially the powerhouse Mannheim Orchestra. So he used scordatura to chemically alter the viola's resonance, giving the soloist the acoustic firepower needed to cut through the texture.
And it required immense physical courage from the player. Remember, these were pure gut strings. Cranking a gut A string up to an A sharp right before a concerto performance carried a very real, terrifying risk of the string simply snapping under the tension while you were on stage. It was high-stakes virtuosity.
Meanwhile, his younger brother Anton Stamitz, who often played second fiddle to Carl's fame, was a formidable force himself. Anton eventually moved to Paris, joined the French Royal Orchestra, taught the famous violinist Rudolf Kreutzer, yes, the Kreutzer of the famous Beethoven Sonata, and composed 4 very demanding viola concertos of his own in B-flat, F, G, and D major.
But the true beauty of Mannheim was that the interest in the viola wasn't limited just to the Stamitz family. It was a complete supportive ecosystem. You had Ignaz Holzbauer writing a concerto for viola and cello. You had Christian Cannabich, one of their most talented conductors, writing intricate duets for violin and viola.
And it wasn't just the string players. The wind players got involved too, which I find fascinating. Ludwig August Lebrun, who was reputedly the greatest oboist of the 18th century, wrote 6 duos for violin and viola. Ernst Eichner, the eminent Mannheim bassoonist, published duos in 1776. Also, Franz Danzig wrote up to 9 duos, and Joseph Martin Krauss wrote a sonata for flute and viola.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about what happens when an oboist writes for the viola. The acoustic interaction between an oboe and a viola is incredibly complex. You have the oboe's sound wave, produced by a tiny, thin double reed, resulting in a highly focused, piercing nasal overtone series.
Right.
And you are pairing that against the viola's thick gut strings, which produce a wide, warm, slightly diffused resonance.
They are acoustic opposites. The oboe cuts, the viola envelops. By writing duets for these instruments, the Mannheim wind players were essentially conducting advanced experiments in tone color. Everyone in Mannheim was feeding off each other's virtuosity, pushing the viola into new harmonic territories.
Indeed, it was a hub of free-flowing artistic exchange. But while Mannheim was innovating through collaborative freedom, another major musical center was developing in Berlin under a completely different, highly rigid philosophy.
Where was this?
This is the court of Frederick II, known as Frederick the Great, in Prussia.
Frederick wasn't just a monarch who liked to listen to music. He was an active participant. He was a patron, a composer, and an excellent, highly demanding flutist. He built a powerhouse chamber orchestra in Potsdam, hiring the absolute best performers in Europe.
Only the best.
And when you have an absolute monarch who plays the flute, the primary job of your orchestra is to accompany the king perfectly. If you play out of tune, you aren't just a bad musician, you are committing treason against the king's downbeat.
That high-stakes environment birthed a rigorous, almost scientific study of the art of accompaniment and ensemble playing. 2 of Frederick's most important musicians, C.P.E. Bach and the flutist Johann Joachim Quantz, wrote authoritative, massive treatises based entirely on their experiences in that strict court.
Quantz is a huge figure here.
Quantz published his famous Versuch einer Anweisung, die Flöte Traversiers zu spielen an, playing the flute in 1752. But crucially for us, Section 3 of Chapter 7 is explicitly titled, Of the Violist in Particular.
And Quantz comes out swinging. He does not pull his punches. He starts by diagnosing the problem, stating that the viola is commonly regarded as of little importance. Why? because, according to him, it is often played by beginners, or by people with no particular gifts on the violin, or because able people aren't persuaded to take it up.
He is literally defining the failed violinist stereotype in print in 1752.
Hold on, I want to push back on this. Isn't Quantz just insulting them? He's a flutist writing a flute manual, and he dedicates a chapter to basically saying, hey, violists, you guys are mostly untalented beginners. That feels incredibly dismissive.
It sounds harsh to modern ears, but you have to read his intent. He isn't insulting the instrument, he is demanding excellence from its players, precisely because he knows how vital their role is.
So it's tough love.
Exactly. He writes that if the entire accompaniment is to be without defect, the violist must be just as able as the second violinist. He is furious that the instrument is being treated as a dumping ground because a bad violist ruins the flute's accompaniment.
Ah, so he's elevating the standard.
Exactly. He challenged violists to be ambitious. He pointed out that many people who played the viola in their youth went on to achieve great eminence, and that a true musician takes an active interest in the entire ensemble, not just the solo lines. He wanted them to take pride in their structural role.
And then Quantz does something absolutely amazing. He doesn't just say, play better. He provides highly specific mathematical acoustic balance rules for the viola. It is basically an 18th century sound engineer's mixing board guide. He writes down the exact acoustic ratios required to balance a room.
The detail is staggering. Let's break down his math. Quantz states that one good, strong viola is sufficient against 4 to 6 violins.
Meaning, if you are the only violist in the room and there are 6 violins blasting away, you have to play with incredible physical strength and projection. You have to dig into the string to balance the texture.
Right.
But he immediately cautions that if only 2 or 3 violins are playing and there is no double bass anchoring the bottom, the violist must radically moderate their tone so they don't cover the upper strings.
He demands constant, active listening. He tells the violist to analyze the score in real time. If the notes you are playing are melodic or part of an invitation, play with the exact same strength as the violins. If the notes are just harmonic filler, back off and play more softly.
And in chamber music, he gives exact fader adjustments depending on the physical instrument sitting next to you, if you are playing against a violin. Quantz says use almost the same strength. Against a cello or a bassoon, use equal strength, match their volume.
But against an oboe, he instructs the violist to play a little more softly, noting that the oboe's tone is physically thin compared to the inherent thickness and width of the violist sound.
And finally, against a flute, perhaps very mindful of his royal employer, King Frederick, who is playing that flute, Quantz demands the violist play very softly, especially if the flute drops into its low, breathy register.
It is a masterclass in acoustic engineering. Quantz wasn't burying the viola. He was establishing the first truly professional standard for orchestral violists. He was demanding that they be the acoustic thermostat of the ensemble, constantly micro-adjusting their bow weight and speed to make everyone else sound perfect.
And that incredibly high standard resulted in a wealth of complex, demanding music pouring out of the Berlin School. C.P.E. Bach composed at least 12 ensemble pieces that prominently include the viola, notably a dense trio sonata in F major for 2 violas and piano.
Lots of great music.
Franz Benda, who was the leader of the King's Orchestra for 40 years, wrote a sonata in C minor for viola and continuo. His brother Georg Benda wrote concertos. Johann Gottlieb Graun wrote several highly meritorious sonatas in B-flat, F, and C minor, and a concerto in E-flat major.
I also want to highlight the composer Johann Gottlieb Janisch. Modern researcher David Sills spent considerable time digging into the archives in East Berlin and discovered that Janisch wrote string quartets that give unusual, almost unprecedented prominence to the viola, far more than his contemporaries. He also wrote complex sonatas mixing the viola with cello, oboe, flute, and continuo.
And then you have Carl Friedrich Zelter, a slightly later Berlin composer, who wrote a fantastic concerto in E-flat major in 1779, scored for viola, strings, and 2 horns.
All of this rich, rigorous development in Berlin, combined with the virtuosic flair of Mannheim, eventually poured southward into the ultimate cultural melting pot, Vienna.
Ah, Vienna.
As we move into the second half of the 18th century, Vienna becomes the undisputed center of the classical sonata, symphony, and string quartet.
And the viola prospered massively from this foundation. Composers like Karl Ditters von Dittersdorf were writing concertos for the viola, including a wild double concerto for viola and double bass in D major and a concerto in F major, which bridged the gap directly to the absolute titans of the era, Haydn, Mozart, and Beethoven. Those three would take all this history and elevate the viola's role in the string quartet to unprecedented heights of conversational equality.
It is a profound evolution. We have traced an instrument's journey from total anonymity to absolute indispensability.
So what does this all mean? When we step back and look at this entire deep dive through Riley's research, the narrative arc is just astonishing. We started in the early 1700s with the theorists literally defining the viola as die Füllende, the background filler, locked invisibly into the middle of the harmony.
But it refused to stay there. Through the theatrical innovations of Reinhard Kaiser in the public opera houses of Hamburg, the instrument found a unique, dramatic voice capable of expressing madness and the supernatural. J.S. Bach recognized its physical power as the harmonic center of gravity, bringing it to the forefront in the Brandenburg Concertos. Telemann aggressively marketed its versatility, creating a vital early commercial repertoire.
And then the Stamitz family in Mannheim proved it could be a dazzling, virtuosic solo instrument that required dangerous acoustic tricks like scordatura just to contain its brilliance. While over in Berlin, Quantz was laying down the law, transforming the violist from a reluctant beginner into a highly disciplined, hyper-aware acoustic engineer of the orchestra.
To all the Viola Studio listeners out there, I want you to realize something profound about your daily routine. The very things you grapple with every day in your practice rooms. Navigating the alto clef, figuring out how to balance your bow weight against a piano or a violin, wrestling with transpositions, and managing the physical realities of the fingerboard. That is the exact DNA of the 18th century pioneers we talked about today. You are the inheritors of a hard-fought musical revolution.
You aren't playing a failed instrument. You are playing the instrument that survived the theorists, conquered the opera, and anchored the Baroque era.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as you look at the music on your stands tomorrow morning. We spent a lot of time today discussing how so much of the foundational Baroque and classical viola repertoire was actually born from radical adaptations.
Right. Bach transcribing his own works, Paul Doctor changing the keys of the gamba sonatas from G to B flat just to preserve the voice leading, Telemann explicitly inviting substitutions, Carl Stamitz demanding scordatura tuning to literally change the instrument's resonance. They were constantly hacking the music to make it work.
Exactly. So in our modern pursuit of historical authenticity, we often become rigidly, almost fearfully obsessed with playing the exact notes on the page, in the exact key, exactly as originally published. But given this history, does true historical authenticity actually mean we should be freely adapting, arranging, and changing keys for the viola today, just as fearlessly as Paul Doctor, Georg Philipp Telemann, and J.S. Bach did? If the defining characteristic of the 18th century viola was its pragmatic, relentless adaptability, perhaps our greatest homage to that era is to keep adapting.
Now there is a diagnostic muddy water worth diving into. Keep practicing, keep questioning the score, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.
Thank you for joining us, and we hope this summary and analysis have been of great help to you. Please remember that this is only a summary and can never replace the book itself. Therefore, we invite you to truly immerse yourself in the work by reading the original text. If this content was useful to you, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell. Remember, you can share this video with your friends to help our community continue to grow. Warmest regards, and remember, there is always time to learn and explore the world of classical music. A Viola Studio production.